Those who are great. Okay, well, let me welcome you folks. Thanks for being here today for another Workshop Wednesday. I am Jen Slattery with the League of Cities and Towns, and today we are excited to have some colleagues with us. I'm going to turn it over to Isaac Berg. Isaac is with the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, where he is the program director for food, climate, and environment. And we've been working with you guys for quite a few years now on a variety of different things, Isaac. So thanks so much for being here. And I'll let you introduce the rest of your crew.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm really excited to do this webinar here. A lot of our work at the so I'm program director for food, climate, environment with the Food Policy Council, and a lot of our work focuses on obviously how we can make the food system more sustainable, and one of those ways is composting and reducing food waste. And so when I saw there was an this great report from an organization called the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, which does fantastic work, focusing on how municipalities can, a roadmap for municipalities. I said, we've got to bring them and share that knowledge with our folks here in Rhode Island. So I'm really excited they agreed to join us. And with that, I'm gonna give them the majority of the time, and then I'm gonna come back and, tell you a little bit more about how, we are working here in Rhode Island to kind of highlight a lot of the things that they have recommended and help you, hopefully make those a reality. So, I will hand it off to Julia and Nora, who are gonna take us through.
Okay, hello everyone. Can you see my screen? Okay, great. So my name is Julia Spector, and I work for the Composting for Community initiative at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. And joining me is Nora Goldstein, who is a co-author of the report, as well as Brenda Platt, who is the director of our Composting for Community initiative and a co-author of the report. Nora is the editorial chairperson and principal at BioCycle and is also on the board of directors at the Institute. And so today we'll be speaking about our new report, Keep Compost Local, a roadmap for local governments to build community prosperity with composting. And the report aims to equip and empower local governments to support and to partner with local composters and other community-based organizations to work toward shared goals. And so a key focus of this content is on successful public-private partnerships, or PPPs as we call them. The Institute for Local Self-Reliance is a national research and advocacy organization, nonprofit founded in 1974 that works to support environmentally sound and equitable community development. We have extensive experience providing assistance to communities to reduce and recycle wasted materials, including fighting trash incinerators around the country and promoting no-burn alternatives. We also work on issues supporting independent businesses, equitable access to the internet, and affordable energy. And so for the Composting for Community initiative, our goal is to catalyze diverse and distributed composting that is rooted in and serving local communities to enhance local soils and community health, to benefit local food production and sequester carbon, to reduce waste and create community development opportunities. And we do this through policy, with research and training, with education, by supporting community composters directly, and with outreach and communications. So just a little bit of background. In 2023, there were nearly 74 million tons of surplus food in the United States, representing 31% of the food supply. And there is a growing number of cities, counties, and states that are recognizing the benefits of food waste composting and accordingly enacting measures that create and expand composting programs. Public policy and contracting, however, tend to favor large operations, which can perpetuate inequality through corporate monopolies and often siphon benefits out of communities. So we believe that a zero waste economy should have an equal playing field that supports healthy competition and efforts of all shapes and sizes that are needed to meet the individual needs of communities. It is sometimes challenging in smaller or dense states like Rhode Island to build larger scale food waste composting facilities. And so, in order to facilitate food scraps composting, these more decentralized facilities are filling a really important gap to service municipal programs. So, what is local composting? It is a composting process where the collection, processing, and use of materials happens within the same communities in which food scraps are generated. So, this includes home composting, on farm composting, both urban and rural, and community composting, which typically engages the community in the process. And this local approach amplifies the cross-sectoral benefits of composting. So these are some of the local and community composters in Rhode Island that we wanted to spotlight. We see several in Providence with others from Newport, Cranston, Charlestown, and Barrington. So there's a wide range of efforts going on in the state, and these are just some examples of those doing work on the ground. So this report, the Keep Compost Local report, provides guidance on implementing initiatives that are designed to meet local needs, and it details how supporting and partnering with local composters advances government priorities. Local governments are uniquely positioned to foster local composting. They have the power to pass ordinances, enter into procurement contracts, offer land access, raise revenue, and more. And local composters have championed food scraps collection and composting and are uniquely positioned within the community to serve as program partners. So the report is largely based on research conducted through 17 case studies from different cities ranging in size across the country. And one of the case studies is a public-private partnership in Providence. So very excited to feature this one in the report. The report also shares findings from our most recent community composter survey. Some highlights of these results include that we continue to see growth. 76% of respondents were scaling up in 2024, and 90% of respondents from our most recent surveys started after 2010. When looking at the relationship between community composters and governments, we found that 31% of survey respondents contract with their local governments in some way, and the percentage receiving revenue from government contracts more than doubled from 12% in 2022 to 25% in 2024. But when asked, how does your local government support you? 19% voluntarily wrote in that they received no support, with one commenting that they literally shut me down, and another mentioning that they have two state agencies regulating compost with different rules. So there are some major barriers that local composters are facing that are stifling their potential. But the research in our case studies shows that there is massive potential for sector growth through public-private partnerships. And in each PPP case study, the community composter was key to making collection and composting a reality. Our research also continues to show that local composting brings myriad economic benefits that address local government priorities. For example, composting locally is an effective alternative to expensive waste disposal methods, such as hauling long distances or rising tipping fees or expanding or constructing landfills or incinerators. And these were key motivators for cities like Albany, New York, Providence, Hoboken, New Jersey, and Norman, Oklahoma. For some cities, it would be too expensive to run programs on their own or to start from scratch, which was the case for Providence, Cleveland, Hoboken, and DC. Partnerships also reduce expenses and realize cost savings related to many areas, such as purchasing soil amendments or fertilizers, saving on green space maintenance costs, and costs for managing rodent issues, as well as benefits to climate resiliency, public health, and food security. Finished compost from local operations in these case studies and across the board is widely used to support food growing efforts in local communities. And some initiatives are also connected to food rescue and recovery efforts as well. Municipal governments can also qualify for public grants that they may have been ineligible for before partnering with a nonprofit. The credibility of the organization's community work and the host of services and co-benefits that they bring also strengthen grant applications. And local composters have built community collaboration into their mission and have built credible reputations, relationships, and trust, making them ideal partners for this work. Local composting also supports workforce development and job training. And on a per ton basis, community composting creates 6 times as many jobs as incinerators and 3 times as many jobs as landfills. It also promotes the development of local infrastructure and a circular economy. And on-farm composting supports garden and farm prosperities, with many community composting operations are sited on farms and some run their own farms. So there's so much to learn from these successful models about the many ways to support local composting. One of the biggest barriers to growth is the cost of expanding and scaling up. So, providing financial support and contracting are among the most impactful strategies. However, there are also many low and no cost options that can support local composting, such as bartering, policy change, and access to public land. So, we're going to take you through some of those. So some elements and examples of different partnership models include contracting for different services, such as in Greenbelt, Maryland, they partner with a local composter for drop-off, and then they expanded to contract for curbside collection and composting. And the curbside subscription is partially funded by the city, with residents paying the remaining portion. In Philadelphia, the local composter contracts with the prisons department for composting, managing their orchard, and running vocational programs. And DC contracts with the local composter for curbside collection. There's also no cost contracts. Durango, Colorado, and a local composter have a 5-year curbside contract with no funding attached to it. So the customers pay the local composter directly, and this contract does not prohibit other entities from offering collection services. Norman, Oklahoma procures compost from a local composter to top dress lawns for their Blue Neighborhood program to protect the watershed. And compost is also applied by the local composter. Cities can also contract with local composters for event services and can support existing operations even if they're not contracting. And many models include several partnerships working together, such as in Traverse City, Michigan. The city has an in-vessel composting system, and the local composter does the collection of food scraps and manages the process and operations. And a local nonprofit provides education and distributes the compost. So to finance projects, grant funding can help to establish municipal programs, but to make them permanent, ongoing allocations in the municipal budget are necessary. Municipal funding allocated in the annual budget fully funds programs in DC, in Hoboken, New Jersey, pictured here, and in Norman, Oklahoma. And programs that started from grant funding and are now in the municipal budget include Bozeman, Montana, and Greenbelt, Maryland. Tipping fee savings are also a straightforward and effective funding mechanism. This is where funds are allocated to pay for composting fees rather than disposal fees. So it's a reallocation of funds. And Ocean City, Maryland, pictured here, they pay a local composter a per ton fee for collection from local restaurants. And this is the same per ton fee that it pays to tip waste at the incinerator. Bartering is also another creative tool. A local composter in Philadelphia collects and composts food scraps from Parks and Rec, youth and adult program centers. And in exchange, it locates its composting operation at Parks and Rec's facilities. And this is a no-cost contract. In Traverse City, Michigan, the city contracts with a local composter to offer food scrap collection, and in exchange, they can tip their collected scraps at the city's composting site. Another funding mechanism with a proven track record of raising funds is the establishment of a per ton surcharge on waste disposal. And this is typically a fee added to the per ton tipping fees charged for disposal at sites such as landfills, incinerators, and transfer stations. And there are many state and local government examples that have disposal surcharges in place to fund local diversion efforts, with Hamilton County, Ohio, being one example. And federal and state grants can help with capital expenses and launching projects. And philanthropic funding can also be an option, so private foundations and local foundations. There are also details in the report about program and project costs, as well as itemized expenses for different aspects of program, equipment, and supplies. We were able to collect cost data from 21 different projects happening within the case studies. And of these 21 projects, 5 cost less than $100,000. 11 projects cost between $100,000 and $400,000. 2 cost between $500,000 and $1 million, and 3 projects cost more than $1 million. So here are some examples of project costs from the report, and we also have an example project budget in the report as well to take a closer look at. Providing access to land that is unutilized or unutilized has been a central theme in these public-private partnerships. In Albany, pictured here, a local composter site is on land that is owned by the city. Hoboken provides their local composter with space for operations and for truck parking. And Norman, Oklahoma grants access for the local composter's composting activities at its warehouse. We also see bartering for land access as another option, along with Philadelphia. Bozeman, Montana provides a local composter with use of their land to host its composting facility. And in exchange, the local composter composts the food scraps from the city's curbside program. New York City's Housing Authority land is utilized for gardens, farms, and composting systems of local groups. And the agreement here is essentially a barter, so use of land in exchange for services provided. There's also right of entry agreements, which can provide composters with access to land. In LA, local composter, a local composter there contracts with the Recreation and Parks Department, and the contract is essentially a right of entry agreement to access the parks versus having to lease each hub. And there is a 1 to 2 year trial period where the local composter has to prove that they are a good steward for this arrangement. Cities can also lease or sell their land. Cleveland entered into a ground lease with a local composter for the use and occupancy of a public unused property. And then this was authorized by the city council, who later authorized the sale of the land to the local composter. And then there's zoning. Cities can amend zoning laws to allow composting as a permissible land use. In Providence, the city supported Harvest Cycle and Groundwork Rhode Island to navigate the zoning code for a new composting facility that they are building. And this is a rendering of this facility. So some key themes for operations and infrastructure are that we saw several municipalities providing carbon-rich materials to local composters for operations, such as Albany, Greenbelt, Maryland, Traverse City, who all supply wood chips or leaves to the local composter regularly. Utilizing multiple composting sites is also common, such as Harvest Cycle in Rhode Island that has several sites using hot composting bins and the building of the new facility. And composting systems can range from 3-bin hot composting to in-vessel earth flow systems to windrows. And then there's also collection options. So curbside and drop-off collection are both great options. Some choose drop-off exclusively, but more common, the model is a combination of both. So, for example, in DC, they have a contract with one local composter for residential curbside collection, and they have a separate contract with a different local composter to service its drop-off sites. The report also goes through different contract options and provides examples and details. Contracts can be in the form of fairly simple service agreements to much more complex procurement of services. Long-term contracts or the ability for renewal options without going out to bid competitively help community composters build financial stability. And payment arrangements can also differ. So, for example, Bozeman, Montana pays their local composter for the amount of finished compost produced rather than incoming materials or the number of households served. And so there are a lot of tips in the report for contracting. So if interested in that, definitely recommend checking that section out. Finished compost is a tangible, positive asset of public-private partnerships between municipalities and local composters, and is a selling point for program development and for building support among elected officials who have to approve a contract or allocate funding. And so, looking at these case studies, where is compost being used? Municipalities commonly receive some of the finished compost from the program to use on their land. And in many cases, the compost is distributed to community gardens or urban farms in the municipality. Sometimes it is retained by the local composter and marketed. But in all cases, the finished compost is utilized locally. And for example, in Providence, Harvest Cycle uses a portion on the gardens where sites are located, and most is given to subscribers and to other urban growers in the community. And then they will start to sell their compost once the new site is built. And then Community Compost Depot in Providence holds compost giveaway events for community members. Equitable access and distribution of services is also key to successful programs. Offering a range of service prices and subscription types and multiple options for participation increases access. Cities can also offer discounted or free services, such as in Cleveland, who works with the local composter to provide free memberships for their drop-off sites for SNAP eligible residents. And in Durango, Colorado, the city covers 90% of costs for low-income qualified residents and for curbside collection. Multiple options for participation also increases access, such as home composting, curbside collection, drop-off services. Albany includes all of these options in their programming. Equitable distribution when setting drop-off locations and infrastructure is also central. So this was a key priority for local composting programs in Cleveland and in LA. And then how finished compost is distributed also matters. Using compost locally for growing healthy food and building healthy soils supports food security, soil remediation, climate adaptation and resilience, and environmental justice. Outreach and education is a distinguishing characteristic of community and local composting. In these public private partnerships, many community composters lead these efforts. And if not, they support the municipalities in their work. And we often see a collaborative approach most often. So, common outreach practices include creating and promoting signage, posters, banners. The local composter in New York City actually involves community members in the creation of banners to make that connection. There's also the use of media and technology, as well as direct outreach to residents. So Zero Waste Providence partners with Garden Time to connect with hundreds of households about Groundwork Rhode Island's drop-off program in the city. Community-based social marketing is another technique going beyond raising awareness to change behavior. And then also many of the local partners offer hands-on training as well to increase engagement and shared learning. So, zeroing in on Rhode Island, we recently asked local composters across the state about some of the challenges that they were facing. And the most common answer that we received was that lack of processing infrastructure is a limiting factor, with not enough composting processing sites to take food scraps, leading to some haulers, unfortunately, having to transport food scraps out of state to be composted. And we've seen that in small and densely populated states, smaller size and decentralized systems work in this type of environment. Some other challenges that we heard were the proliferation of AD, as well as what that means for source separation, as well as the financing to scale programs. So for the Providence case study, a big motivation for the city to increase food scraps waste diversion is the high cost of trash disposal, especially when it exceeds the yearly cap that is established by the Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation. With only one landfill in the state, the tipping fee more than doubles when the cap is exceeded, and Providence exceeded the cap by more than 11,000 tons in 2023. So this resulted in over $630,000 in additional charges for that year. And the city spent overall nearly $5 million in disposal fees in 2023. So recycling organic materials is a key pathway to increase diversion from landfills and incinerators. The partnership also enables the city to apply for public grants that it received and allowed the city to tap into existing services and offerings, enabling them to channel the credibility and experience of partners. And the program also includes outreach and education, supports local businesses, and supports local nonprofits. In the case study, the City of Providence received two federal grants, one from EPA and one from USDA to increase food scraps diversion as well as recycling. And this enabled the funding of subawards to local operators to carry out the project. And some of these include Groundwork Rhode Island and Harvest Cycle, which has 15 drop-off sites, 9 3-bin composting systems, and they are working on building a new composting facility. And then also to Community Compost Depot, another community compost operation that does drop-off and composting. Also to Zero Waste Providence, who provides outreach and educational services, and to Garden Time Inc., who works with Zero Waste Providence to conduct the direct outreach to residents and does other education. And here are some photos of these organizations. Here is the project cost for the second federal grant to increase food scraps diversion from USDA. So this is just a breakdown of where these funds are being allocated and distributed among the partners that we talked about. So you can see some of the distribution here. And then here is a rendering for the West End Compost Hub that is currently under development by Groundwork Rhode Island and Harvest Cycle to increase processing infrastructure in the city. So, in addition to contracts and partnerships, policy change presents huge possibilities for the future of composting. Laws, regulations, contracting, and procurement can either uplift or significantly hinder the ability of local composting programs to operate, scale up, and successfully divert organics. By passing laws, evaluating and updating regulations, and incorporating local composting into municipal and county plans, local governments can address regulatory barriers, adopt supportive policies, and encourage local investment. So, this report includes 16 policy recommendations, each of which are accompanied by at least one resource for action or for more information. And so, some of the recommendations in the report include evaluate and identify regulatory barriers, both at the state and local level, to designate composting as a permissible land use within zoning codes. Localities that have examples of this include Toledo, Ohio, Montgomery County, Maryland, and Pomona, California. To establish a per ton surcharge on waste disposal to fund infrastructure and programs. Successful localities are Alameda County, California, and Hamilton County, who both have these surcharges. To establish local organic diversion policy if the state doesn't have one, including Austin, Texas has this policy, so does San Francisco and New York City. And then incorporating local composting into formal government plans and roadmaps like climate action or protection plans, zero waste plans, or sustainability agendas. Several case studies where were possible because of the inclusion of composting services in official plans, such as the City of Bozeman Climate Action Plan, Hoboken Zero Waste Plan, and New York City Housing Authority's Sustainability Plan, as well as Norman, Oklahoma's Climate Protection Plan. Another recommendation is to incentivize compost use and local composting, such as with tax credits for the purchase of compost. In North Carolina, farmers are exempt from paying sales or use tax, with reimbursement programs, such as Hawaii's program that reimburses farmers and landscapers for costs to purchase compost, and DC's Home Composting Incentive Act, which includes $75 rebates for residents who purchase home systems. Ensuring the right to compost and a right to subscribe to a service for HOAs and condos is another recommendation. And then adopting local executive orders or resolutions that proclaim official support. The City of Bozeman Commission gave a directive to the Solid Waste Office to start residential collection, and Durango, Colorado passed a resolution to research organics diversion laws and conduct pilot programs. So, to wrap things up, some of the key takeaways that we want to highlight from the report include that local composting brings myriad economic benefits that address local government priorities, such as avoided waste disposal costs and cost savings across multiple sectors. That public-private partnerships with local composters offer massive potential to scale up impact. That community composters are growing, impactful, and resilient, and that numerous opportunities exist for government to support and advance local composting, and that policy directly shapes the local landscape for composting. So these studies and research really underscore the strength and potential of local composting. Economic investment and political support have the power to uplift this movement that centers and maximizes economic, social, and environmental benefits to local composting. And so, with that, Nora, I'd love to invite you to share anything that you'd like to add.
Great, thank you, and really great presentation, Julia. The only thing I guess I would add is that local composters in many, many municipalities have been scrappy in getting themselves started and have really connected with community members, figured out route logistics over time, how to manage contamination, how to facilitate behavior change. And so, if a municipality is interested in starting a program to offer to residents, you can really get a leg up if you work with local composters and tap into their knowledge and experience, and also the infrastructure they have provided in terms of vehicles and carts and either their own composting operations or collaborations with other ones. So it's just a local resource that when a jurisdiction decides, you know what, we really want to start to offer this to residents, or residents are asking for it. It's really important to inventory what's in not just your community, but maybe surrounding communities, one county over, because sometimes these local composters have enough infrastructure that they can add additional jurisdictions, surrounding. So with that, we'd love to hear your question. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Nora, and I'll pass it over to Isaac now.
Sorry about that. Just getting everything organized here. So let me get this up and we'll share this now. Here we go. Alrighty. Yeah, so thanks so much, Julia, for that. Um, I think hopefully what you took away from that is that, these solutions do not have to be huge. They do not have to be super expensive. There's a lot of ways that you can get engaged in composting and keep it local. One of the things I saw in the presentation was that, there were some folks that talked about, the different state regulatory agencies and things like that. One advantage we actually have here in Rhode Island is on a state level, we have actually a pretty good regulatory environment compared to what I've seen in some other places. Um, so then it comes down to what we can do on the local level. So, as I said, my job is to work with a lot of the communities and try to help you figure out what's going to work for your particular community. And I think what you just saw was a fantastic roadmap for that, and I highly encourage you to dive into that. But then we can help you take the next step, and get it a little more um, focused on your particular community. So, again, I think Julia mentioned some of these things, but we only have the one landfill here in Rhode Island, and it's going to close by 2046. And we know from working with the state solid waste management plan that, this is going to double rates here in Rhode Island. So we really need to start working on this. I have here on this slide that, we send 100,000 tons of compostable material. According to the solid waste management plan, it may in fact be closer to 150,000, and that's just food waste. So there is a lot of reasons to start getting composting here in Rhode Island. Julie mentioned the solid waste caps. They just keep decreasing here as our landfill nears capacity. And so, we really need to take some action. And we're already, even with a nice deal that the municipalities have with the Rhode Island Resource Recovery, we're still at the fourth highest rates of average tipping fee. So, um, and then of course that ignores the fact that we have our net zero emissions goal through the Act on Climate. And so that's, just gonna add another thing that the state's gonna start really pushing on as methane in landfills is the third leading cause of methane emissions. So, there's a lot of reasons to get started now and not wait until we have something thrust upon us in 10, 20 years. Um, so how can you get engaged? Julia had talked about some educational programming. My colleague Isaac Reed is on the call, and he is excellent at coming to your community and, teaching about how you can really start getting composting in your backyard. We provide those courses free of charge. We would just ask that your community helps us promote it. And, every food scrap that is not in the you know in the trash is food scrap that is not counting towards your waste caps. So and composting, ILSR's got, I don't think they even mentioned their hierarchy. Maybe they did, but they have a fantastic hierarchy of waste, and backyard is right towards the top there. In right after not wasting it all. So we'll help you with the that kind of program, and you see the Earth Machine, you can get those from Rhode Island Resource Recovery. Some communities like South Kingstown have used Rhode Island Resource Recovery grants, and they were able to, provide those to, the community. But even without that kind of thing, they're still pretty affordable, especially if you buy them as a community. And again, we would just ask that you kind of think about how you might help promote it through different avenues, such as social media, newsletters, that kind of thing. And that's really going to start for any type of program be a huge thing. And Providence, for example, has a great website where you can find all of the options that are available to you. You heard about these decentralized network of community drop-off sites. It was awesome to hear that, Providence and Harvest Cycle is one of the featured examples in the report. But we've seen, in South Kingstown and in Little Compton and other places, folks, going towards that route, whether it's just at the transfer station, or other parts of your community. And we can help you think through, what would that look like? You'll notice this particular one has a lock on it. And so we can help you think about, well, who gets access to that? It's usually people who have signed up for the program, taken a course, that kind of thing. We can help you with that aspect so that you don't have contamination as part of these. There are also folks, Julie mentioned that there's a lot of folks processing at like a community garden. And so, there's a lot of different small scale options that can work for your community. Instead of just being, a drop-off hub, it can also be a small scale processing hub. And maybe you can have volunteers from the community garden or whomever help with that kind of thing. Because I know obviously processing and DPW time is very scarce. So we want to work with you to make sure that this is going to work for your community. Curbside pickup is a popular option. And we can help you think through who are the, potential options. They do usually like to have a minimum threshold of folks who in order to come to a town. But one of the things that we've seen is people do surveys to see what the interest level is, and so we can help you put out a survey to the community and see if folks are willing to participate in something like this. um, and we can also help you think through, like, would we subsidize this in some way? So some folks subsidize, the bins that go to each household, and that's all they do. Some folks subsidize, a portion of the actual subscription cost. That's what we've seen with Newport and Barrington and Bristol, which have new programs. They've subsidized a portion of the first year and then a slightly less of the second year to kind of get people used to doing this kind of things. And that's grant supported. And we can try and help you think about, what that would look like for your community. Again, there could be, a small scale compost facility that you look at. That could be at your transfer station. If you have a existing leaf and yard waste facility, we can help you think through those things. And so, again, these don't have to be tremendously cost prohibitive. There is a cost, the more you want to do, but they don't have to be that cost prohibitive. Um, and so, you see here a couple of different versions of what that might look like, from Earth Care Farm down in Charlestown, which is a little bit bigger, to, the composter in a shipping container, that you've seen there. And I think Julia featured as well. And then you saw another great example, from the West End, compost hub here in Providence that will be coming online hopefully later this year. They don't, again, have to have huge footprints. They can work within communities. They can be enclosed so they can address a lot of, concerns that folks have. Julia mentioned all the policy models, so I won't go through them in great depth, but we can help you think through, what might potentially work for your community in terms of pay as you throw, model zoning ordinances, compost procurement policies. But I will stop here for a second on the state policy in terms of funding. So, obviously the number one thing that you can do with when it comes to food waste, as I said, is don't waste the food in the first place. There is a lot of perfectly good food that could be donated and is not. And one of the reasons is education. Another reason is just people are not used to setting up in their restaurant, the process of that. So, we would love to work with your community on how we can encourage residents, or sorry, businesses to start donating food. And one of the ways we can support that is through a bill that we have in the legislature called the Food Donation Tax Credit, which would give a small tax credit to businesses who start donating edible food. We also have a food waste ban legislation, which is going to enable DEM to have actual authority to regulate the current food waste ban, which they don't currently have, which is a little crazy. But then there's also how are we going to fund a lot of this stuff? And so one of the ways that we're looking at is through the compost fund. So that's a $2 surcharge for all waste going to the landfill. Now, the current version allows for municipalities to opt in to that surcharge. So you would only be charged on municipal solid waste if your community opt in. And that money would go to a municipal grant fund going directly back to the municipalities, as well as a competitive grant fund, which would allow for nonprofits, for-profit entities, and others to be able to, provide some of the best possible solutions. And, why would you match opt-in? In part because we believe there will be matching dollars available. And regardless of whether this passes, we do think there's an opportunity for some funding in the near future. So our job really is to get you ready so that, you understand what your town is willing to do when those opportunities are available. Um, so I won't go too much into the benefits of composting. You've heard some of them already. I just wanted to put this here to say there are a number of different ways that, you can use that finished product once your community has started to engage with composting. And, sometimes even if it's a curbside program, they will give it back. And so the more local that your program is, the more likely you're to be able to gain these benefits and start using it in your community. Again, we can provide some technical assistance resources, whether that's connecting you with the Department of Environmental Management and Center for Ecotechnology, which does business technical assistance, connect you with donation organizations. So we are here to connect you with the resources that you would need. Um, so that's what I've got for you. Again, I would really encourage you all to take a look at that report. It is a great roadmap for, what you might be thinking about doing, and then let's talk and let's see what we can do for your community. So with that, I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
If there are questions, we're a small enough group, you can just take yourself off of mute and we can get answering. looks like everyone has a lot to digest. That was certainly a lot of information, a lot of great information. Um, Isaac, what would be kind of the next step for a community who's maybe not even considered um, composting yet on a kind of serious scale?
Yeah, so I would say two things. One, have an open mind, right? Um, we presented a whole lot of different options. Some of them aren't going to work for your community. That's fine. But it's good to at least think about it and then say, okay, actually, I don't think this is going to work. What about these other options? And so that would be my thing is just have an open mind, be willing to think about all of the options, and then let's talk. And also read the report.
Exactly. So they don't have to have the answers when they come to you. They can kind of strategize different options based on community characteristics.
Exactly. They know their communities way better than I do, but I can help them think through the different options and how it might work. So,
Great. All right. Well, looking like we don't have any questions at the moment, but I would like to thank Isaac for putting this together, and Julia and Nora for being here. The report is fabulous, and I get so excited when anyone wants to write anything specific to local government. So thank you. Um, and yeah, we're hoping that we can circle back again. Isaac, if we maybe wanted to do something on the ground in the summer to showcase a great program, that might be a fun thing to do. So let's stay in touch on the topic. I think it's certainly got so many benefits.
yeah, absolutely. Happy to do so. And thanks so much, Julie and Nora.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you
Absolutely.
for
Thanks so
having
much.
us.
Have a great day. Thanks for
Yeah.
being here, everyone.
Bye-bye.